Okay. I hope that I'm bringing across the fact that we're taking a journey. And as we go through this journey, things get uncovered that we have to shuffle the order just a little bit as we're going through, because I'm trying to get this sequentially. I'm trying to bring us through the exile and back into the land sequentially, and all the way up to Yeshua, and eventually bring it to where we're at today. So, as we peel this onion back to look at the exact order of things, from the warnings of the exile up to Yeshua is the path I'm on now. I'm still putting pieces together for later as well, but that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make this path, because even if you read in a 1-year Bible schedule, you don't always catch the way that the scriptures laid out, how things intertwine, unless somebody points it out to you and you begin to discover it. You begin to have that ability to see those. It's like patterns. Once you begin to see patterns, you can see the patterns all over the place. This is the order that I think that I've got right now, and I've got a little one-sentence statement about each one of these. And I've got like a dozen of these, and I'll just leave them up here, and you can take them. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I am going to read up to where we're at. Here's the order I think we have them in now. Jeremiah, and we already covered Jeremiah briefly, and that's, again, it's only temporary that I'm only covering these things briefly, thinking that you're going to follow up with these in your own study. Then Ezekiel, and then Daniel, and Ezra is actually in two parts. The return is actually in two parts. The first part we're going to cover today, and then there's two more prophets that come along, Haggai and Zechariah, and then Esther, and then Ezra part 2, then Nehemiah, then Malachi, and then the 400 years of silence. Okay? Now, here's a sample of what the one sentence boiled down to sounds like. With Jeremiah, he was kind of like the prosecutor. He was the ones that warned Judah of the coming destruction. Jeremiah also is the one that said that the house of Israel was being driven out, but her sister Judah was just as bad as Israel was. Well, here comes Jeremiah also told the house of Judah that the destruction of the first temple was coming. He also explained why the exile was inevitable, and he planted hope by promising a future restoration in the new covenant. All right? Ezekiel was a prophet among the exiles who revealed that Elohim had not abandoned his people. He explained the spiritual reason for the temple departure and the promised future return of Yah's glory and a restored house of Israel. And then Daniel was a witness of Yah's sovereignty to the other sovereigns that he was working under. Okay, he was to the kingly level. All right, and that brings us up to where we're at today, the record of the first return from exile, and it's focused on restoring the altar, rebuilding the second temple, and to reestablish proper worship in the land in spite of opposition. So there's like a dozen of those up here. If you want one, you can come and get it. So like I said, we've already looked at Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. And last week we took a brief look at returning back to the land. Today we're going to look deeper at the return and the rest of these important figures that in the history of Yah's people. We're going to begin in Ezra 1 through 6 is going to be what we cover today. And again, I'm only covering these things briefly, giving you some traction so that you've got something to look into deeper in your own study. All right? So Ezra chapters 1 through 6 are the initial return to the land. And let's pick it up in Ezra chapter 1, verse 1. Ezra chapter 1, verse 1. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, the word of Yah by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. Yah stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and also put it in writing, saying, Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth that Yahweh Elohim of heaven has given me, and he has commanded me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Now that's pretty clear that this King Cyrus is saying that it was Yah that instructed him to do what he's doing. Who remembers the prophet that called out Cyrus by name to be a servant of Yah? And you guys remember? It was just a couple of weeks ago.
Ezekiel?
Who prophesied that Cyrus was coming by name? Isaiah did, yes, exactly. Isaiah prophesied that. Then it was like 150 years before it happened. All right? All right, jumping down to verse 3. Who is among you, all his people? Now this is Cyrus speaking. Who is among you, all his people? May his Elohim be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build a house to Yah, Elohim of Israel. He is Elohim, which is in Jerusalem. And whoever is left in any place where he dwells, let the men of his place help him with silver and gold and goods and livestock, besides the free will offerings for the house of Elohim, which is in Jerusalem. Now, does this sound familiar to anybody? It's got familiar verbiage in it.
It goes right back to the tabernacle.
It does go right back to the tabernacle. The people were given in. It's hard. It's very difficult not to get way in the weeds on this, but
they were given the desire to donate.
right. Yah's the one that gave him the desire to donate, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
The women did first.
what's that?
The women gave first. Remember their earrings, the mirrors, they gave all.
Right. Right. And so that you see the same thing happening again. But Jeremiah was told to buy land before they were even booted from Judah, and that was a sign that they were coming back. Okay? And while they were in exile, God did make them wealthy. And that wealth ended up going right back in to the temple. All right, verse 5. Then the heads of the fathers, houses of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, with all whose spirits Elohim had moved, arose to go up and to build the house of Yah, which is in Jerusalem. Now, as I read this time, something struck me a little bit different. We made comments. I have made comments. I'm just going to say, I have made comments several times on the fact that there's very few went back to Judah out of the exile. And this jumped out at me. Whose spirits Elohim had moved. Did he only move certain people back down into Judah? That's a possibility. I mean, the heads of the households were going, the priests and the Levites were going, and those that whose spirits he moved, they arose and they went down to build the house. Okay? Now, verse 6. All those who were around them encouraged them with articles of silver and gold, with goods and livestock, and with precious things. Besides all that, was willingly offered. King Cyrus also brought out the articles of the house of Yah, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken from Jerusalem, and put up in the temple of his Elohim. Now Cyrus, king of Persia, brought them out by the hand of Mithridath, the treasurer, and counted them out to Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah. So here we see the king of the King Cyrus taking those items that belonged in the temple, were taken from the temple in Jerusalem. He's given them back. He's given them back. Now jump down to verse 11. All the articles of gold and silver were 5,400. All of these Sheshbazzar took with the captives who were brought from Babylon to Jerusalem. Now, let's move into Ezra chapter 2. Now these are the people of the province who came back from captivity, of those who had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon had carried away to Babylon, and who returned to Jerusalem and Judah, everyone to his own city. Okay, so they're going back to the city that they came from. Those who came with Zerubbabel were Jeshua, Nehemiah. This is not the same Nehemiah we read about later. Sarai, Reliah, Mordecai. This is not the same Mordecai we read about later. Bishla, Mispar, Bigvai, Rehum. We're not going to go through all of these. The number of men of the people of Israel. Now there's a big list of all of those, and we're not going to go through all of those. But what I want to point out to you, this kind of struck me too. Did it click to you? I mean, did you hear the name Jerusalem mentioned a lot? I was looking at that as I was going through those verses, and Jerusalem is mentioned 8 times in just the verses that we've covered so far. And I got to thinking about that, and I said, thinking about going back into the land, and I'm looking at what happened back then and looking at what's going on right now. And I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking to see, is there anything, not to try to predict a date or anything like that, but just to be a watchman, to be diligent. I know he did it back here. I know he's consistent on doing patterns. Is there something there? So Jerusalem being mentioned a lot, and Jerusalem being a hot button today, I said, well, it was mentioned, Jerusalem is mentioned a lot. Why might that be relevant to us today? And I think from what I've been studying, from what I've been watching, I think that God is honestly getting ready to reveal Mount Sinai in its location, proof beyond a shadow of a doubt. The Sinai Peninsula thing is going to go away, and the truth is going to be, and I think that the Exodus crossing, or the Red Sea crossing, is going to be identified at the same time. And when that happens, that should end the Jerusalem discussion. It's going to take way more than that. I mean, the world has to be ready for that. But when the world when it's found out globally, and there's videos, there's pictures, there's accounts, by many people, not just Ron Wyatt, who did it back, seems like 150 years ago, but most recently, I just watched a documentary of 4 Calvary Chapel pastors that went over to Mount Sinai. They witnessed it. They saw the split rock. They saw the way things were laid out on the ground. They saw the charred mountain. And they took video and they took pictures and they did a documentary. It's only a matter of time before that gets released, and globally it begins to pick up traction. So, how long is that going to take? I don't have any idea. But let's just think for a minute. Let's look at how long it took for Abram to become Abraham and Sarah to deliver Isaac. Not Ishmael, Isaac. Okay? It took 10 years before Ishmael got here, and then another 13 before Isaac got here. So that's 23. 23 years. Where were you 23 years ago? And how fast did that 23 years go by? Some of you weren't here 23 years ago. Some of us were only old 23 years ago.
You were here, I was here.
Some of us were
If I was old then, I'm ancient now.
All right, so let's get back to the text. And I want to zoom out for just a moment and look at who Ezra and Zerubbabel are. They're mentioned in Ezra 2:2. Ezra, he held a dual role. He was both a priest and a scribe. And to read this in the scripture, to see where the scripture tells us he was a priest and a scribe, we need to jump up to, just write this down, you don't have to turn there. But if you fast forward in Ezra to Ezra chapter 7, in verse 1, it says this. Now after these things, in the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Ezra, the son of Seraiah, the son of Azariah, the son of Hilkiah, jump down to verse 5. It's keeping his lineage going down. You jump down to verse 5 and you read the son of Abishu, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the chief priest. And verse 6 says, this Ezra came up from Babylon, and he was a skilled scribe. So there you have it. He's a priest and a scribe right there, okay? In the law of Moses, which Yahweh Elohim of Israel had given. The king granted him all his requests according to the hand of Yah, his Elohim, upon him. And jumping down to verse 10, for Ezra, this is important. Look at this sequence here. For Ezra had prepared in his heart to seek the law of Yah and to do it and to teach it. These two guys right here, they have sought, they have doed it, and they have teached it. I can just blow the English language up. All right, so, but the point is, Ezra had determined in his heart, he prepared in his heart, he was seeking the law, and he did it, and he taught it. And this is going back into the land. Don't miss this. This is how important this is. They're going back into the land. Why did they get kicked out of the land? For not doing what Ezra is doing right here. Okay? So they're going in on the right foot. Now Zerubbabel, he's not a king, but he is of the kingly line of David. And to see that in the text, you just have to read Matthew 1. I'm just going to highlight a few of those verses. Now, the book of the genealogy of Yeshua Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham, Abraham begot Isaac, Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot Judah and his brothers. Jumping down to verse 11, Josiah begot Jeconiah and his brothers about the time they were carried away to Babylon. And verse 12, and after they were brought to Babylon, Jeconiah begot Shealtiel, and Shealtiel begot Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel begot Abiud, Abiud begot Eliakim, and Eliakim begot Azor. And jumping down to verse 16, and Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Yeshua, who is called the Messiah. So there's the tie in Matthew chapter 1. That clearly tells it. And in both cases, in the Ezra case and in the Zerubbabel case, you not only have the names and the lineages, but you also have the reference to Babylon. You can't miss it. You can't miss that being accurate. All right, so moving on to Ezekiel chapter 3. And when the 7th month had come, and the children of Israel were in the cities, the people gathered together as one man in Jerusalem. Now this, you can read over this and read over this and read over this, and I'm telling you, this was a big turning point in my walk. Coming over here, I began to learn about the law. And one of the things that David taught that stuck with me from the beginning was the patterns. And when you're reading the scripture with the Hebraic mindset, you read the 7th month, and what do you think? You read the 7th month and couple it with everybody gathering together, and what do you think of? The feast. That's right. Okay? And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, I know that Yah doesn't do coincidences. And I started doing some research. I want you to write this down, but you don't have to turn there. I want you to listen to where Judah was on Yah's calendar when she was taken to Babylon. This comes from 2 Kings chapter 24. And I'm going to preface it with chapter 24, verse 20, and then it's going to kick right into chapter 25. But in chapter 24, verse 20, for because of the anger of Yah, this happened in Jerusalem and Judah, that he finally cast them out of his presence. Then Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. So this is King Zedekiah's reigning. Chapter 25, verse 1. Now it came to pass in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and all his army came against Jerusalem and encamped against it, and they built a siege wall against it and all around it. So when the city was besieged, until the 11th year, from the 9th year to the 11th year of King Zedekiah, by the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine had become so severe that in the city that there was no food for the people or the land. Then the city wall was broken through, and all of the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between the two walls, which was by the king's garden, even though the Chaldeans were still encamped around against the city, and the king went by the way of the plain. Jump down to verse 8 of chapter 25. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar, this guy right here, the captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem, and he burned the house of Yah, and the king's house, and the houses of Jerusalem, that is, all the houses of the great, he burned with fire. Now listen to Jeremiah's account of the same thing in Jeremiah chapter 52, verses 12 and 13. Now in the 5th month, on the 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, that captain of the guard came who served the king of Babylon, and he burned the house of Yah, the king's houses. He says the same thing. And all the houses of Jerusalem, that is, all the houses of the great, he burned with fire. Now, in Yah's land, in Yah's timing, by the 5th month, both Passover, unleavened bread, and Shavuot would have passed, but tabernacles would not have arrived yet. He picks up right where he left off on his calendar. We just read in the 7th month, they all gathered together as one. Right back on Yah's time clock. Imagine that. Actually, they were never off of Yah's time clock. All right, so getting back into the text. And the 7th month had come, the children of Israel were in the cities, the people gathered together as one man in Jerusalem. Then Jeshua the son of Jozadak and his brethren the priests, and Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel and his brethren arose and built the altar of Israel to offer burnt offerings, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of Elohim. Now, they built the altar first. In fact, if you think about David's life, he built the altar before the temple was built. Patterns. David, that's the best thing you ever taught me, sir. That is the best thing that you've ever taught me. All right, now, though fear had come upon them because of the people of those countries, they set the altar on its bases, and they offered burnt offerings on it to Yah, both morning and evening, burnt offerings. So they kept the Feast of Tabernacles, as it is written, and offered the daily burnt offerings in the number required by the ordinance of each day. Verse 5. Afterwards, they offered the regular burnt offerings and those for new moons and for the appointed feasts of Yah that were consecrated, and those of everyone who willingly offered free will offerings to Yah. From the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings to Yah, although the foundation of the temple had not been built. Jumping down to verse 8. Now in the 2nd month of the 2nd year of their coming to the house of Elohim at Jerusalem, Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, Jeshua the son of Jehozadak, and the rest of the brethren, the priests and the Levites, and all those who had come out of the captivity to Jerusalem, began work and appointed the Levites from 20 years old and above to observe and oversee the work of the house of Yah. Verse 10. When the builders laid the foundation of the temple of Yah, the priests stood in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites and the son of Asaph with cymbals, to praise Yah according to the ordinance of David, king of Israel. And they sang responsively, praising and giving thanks to Yah, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever toward Israel. Then all the people shouted with a great shout. I'm not going to get through this. When they praised Yah, because the foundation of the house had been laid. But many of the priests and Levites and heads of their fathers' houses, old men who had seen the first temple, wept with a loud voice when the foundation of this temple was laid before their eyes. Yet many shouted aloud for joy, so that the people could not discern the noise of the shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people. For the people shouted with a loud shout, and the sound was heard far off. Now, if you read this account and you match it to the account of Solomon's temple, you'll notice several things. It's pointed out to us in Scripture. it was obviously less glorious than the first temple was. But the big thing I want you to take away from this is when you compare those two stories, the Spirit of Yah came down in that cloud and filled the temple. The glory of God came down in Solomon's temple. It didn't here. That's pretty significant. It didn't here. All right? All right, so moving on to chapter 4. Ezra 4, the opposition to God's word. Who knew that this would ever come, huh? Now, when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the descendants of the captives were building the temple of Yah, they came to Zerubbabel and the heads of the father's house, and they said to them, "Let us build with you." David, we were just talking about this last week, I think. "Let us build with you, for we seek your Elohim as you do, and we have sacrificed to him since the days of the king of Assyria, who brought us here." But Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the rest of the heads of the father's house of Israel said to them, "You may do nothing with us to build the house of our Elohim, but we alone will build to Yahweh Elohim of Israel, as King Cyrus, king of Persia, has commanded us." And then the people of the land tried to discourage the people of Judah. They troubled them in building, and they hired counselors against them and to frustrate their purpose in all the days of King Cyrus of Persia. They were frustrating it all the time that Cyrus was king. And even until the reign of Darius. And, just to weave things back and forth, we know that Daniel was contemporary with Darius as well. So in verse 6, in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, they wrote accusations to the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. Now, I'm going to encourage you, I'm running out of time, so what's happening here is these guys that are trying to obstruct the building of the temple, they're writing to the king to say, hey, if they build this up, they're not going to follow you and all this other stuff. They're building the opposition. I encourage you, go back and read Ezra 4 closely to read the letter that they wrote. But here's what I want you to pay attention to real quick. In verse 17 from Ezra chapter 4, the king sent an answer to the commander, to Shimshai the scribe, and the rest of the companions who dwell in Samaria, and to the remainder beyond the river, peace and so forth. And the letter which you sent has been clearly read before me, and I gave the command, and a search has been made, and it was found that this city in former times has revolted against the kings and rebelled against sedition, have been fostered, and rebellion against sedition have been fostered in it. There have also been mighty kings over Jerusalem, who have ruled over all the reign beyond the river, and tax, tribute, and custom were paid to them. Now, give the command to make these men cease, that this city may not be built until the command is given by me. Take heed now that you do not fail in this. Why should damage increase to the hurts of the king? And that's how the letter got the king's attention, by telling him this is going to hurt your treasury. That's how they got the king's attention. So he writes this answer back. And in verse 23, now a copy of King Artaxerxes' letter was read, and they went up with haste to Jerusalem against the Jews, and by force of arms they made them cease. And the work of the house of Yah ceased at Jerusalem. It ceased and was discontinued until the second year of the reign of Darius. So now the prophet, chapter 5, prophet Haggai and Zechariah prophesied to the Jews who were in Jerusalem in the name of Elohim, the Elohim of Israel. And we'll cover more about Haggai and Zechariah in another study. But to summarize it, they said, look, this is what they told the people. God spoke through Isaiah. The rebuilding is going to happen. He named Cyrus, and as one of those, as the one who would authorize it. Now get up and do the work in spite of the opposition. That's very summarized. Okay? So Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Yeshua, the son of Zozadak, rose up and began to build the house of Elohim in Jerusalem. And the prophets of Elohim were with him, helping him. At that time, Tadanini, the governor of the region beyond the river, he wrote another letter. He went to him and he says, who commanded you to do this? And then accordingly, we told them the names of the men who were constructing the building, but the eyes of their Elohim was upon the elders of the Jews, so that they could not make them cease until they could hear from Darius. Then a written answer came back concerning this matter. And King Darius says to the governor beyond the river and his companions, the Persians beyond the river, they wrote this letter to King Darius. And I encourage you to go back and read it. Let me get to where King Darius is. They wrote him another letter, and thus they returned us an answer, saying, we are the servants of Elohim of heaven and earth. This is in verse 11 of chapter 5. And we are rebuilding the temple that was built many years ago, which a great king of Israel built and completed. Verse 12. But because our fathers provoked the Elohim of heaven with wrath, he gave them into the land of Nebuchadnezzar. Now this is a confession that they're making here, okay? And the Chaldeans who destroyed this temple and carried the people away to Babylon. However, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Babylon, King Cyrus issued a decree to build the house of Elohim, and also all the gold articles and everything that are coming with it. Verse 15, and he said, take these articles and go and carry them to the temple that is in Jerusalem. So the rest of verse 5 talks about just like that. In verse 17 it ends, now therefore, if it seems good to the king, let a search be made in the king's treasury house, which is there in Babylon, whether it was so that a decree was issued by King Cyrus to build the house of Elohim in Jerusalem, and let the king send us his pleasure. And chapter 6 covers the response that Darius gives. And in a nutshell, what he says in chapter 6 is, yes, that decree was there. We're holding up that decree. By the way, all you guys on the outskirts of Jerusalem, you're going to help support and pay for this in any way that you can. And I'm commanding you to stay as far away from the construction as possible. That's all summarized by what he said. If you go back and you read through chapter 16, or chapter 6 rather, that's what you're going to find out. And he tells them, don't let this work be hindered. It's going to be carried out. So we've talked about the patterns that take place. And remember, the initial entry into the promised land was led by Joshua under the authority of the commander of Yah's army. Elohim's people were commanded to conquer the land and to drive out the inhabitants. Instead, they ended up defiling the land and broke the covenant with Elohim. Yah separated the house of Judah from the house of Israel and placed the house of Judah in that leadership role. But he was still promising to regather. Israel gets scattered. He separated the house of Israel from himself, and they got scattered, but he was promising to regather. And he exiled the house of Judah for the same offenses. But when the return to the land, he was protecting the line of Messiah, is what he was doing when he put him in exile, among several other things. He has a way of doing that. But the return to the land under Ezra and Zerubbabel was under the authority of Cyrus. It wasn't under the authority. Yah orchestrated it, but it was under the authority of Cyrus. Judah began offering sacrifices, but there came to a point where they delayed the building of the temple because of the opposition. Elohim sends prophets to both remind them of the rebuilding as his command and to command them to build on in spite of the opposition. They do, the temple's rebuilt, albeit smaller, and the glory of the Lord doesn't descend upon the temple. And then they live in the land for 400 years under man's rule. They're not doing what they're. It's not the way that Yah intended it. And then corruption reigns as well until the second temple is finally destroyed. This happened even while even while the Messiah is spoken of through all the Torah and the writings and the Psalms. He arrived in the flesh and he dwelt among the people. But in 70 AD, the Jews were scattered, just as the house of Israel was, except he did not say that they were not his people. With the same promise of a regathering, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, they all tell us that. We're still waiting for that return. He told us the Father's house, Yeshua came and he told us the Father's house has many rooms and he goes to prepare a place for us. We serve, we wait, and we watch. Only for us in 2026, that many years after Messiah came, died, and rose, our watching produces some interesting historical events that could be patterns. Because there was another re-entry of the Jews into the land. We talked about that briefly last week. 1948, right? What's that? Partial,
Yeah.
Correct. Again,
Very small amount of them.
orchestrated by Yah, but not under the authority of governments around them, right? It is a pattern.
Well, there is a pattern there.
Yeah.
Even the pattern of the temple, if you read, Yeshua says we are the temple.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
true.
But don't get me, the temple is not the temple that was built by man. It's, when you look up the definition in the Greek of what the temple is, it's a sanctuary, which means dwelling place. The dwelling place of the Creator was the tabernacle, so you're the walking, living, movable tabernacle. And
Right.
that's, I think that when you're looking at what these stories all about, it's man can build it, but it's not gonna be permanent. The permanent temple is what he's building today, and that's the children of Israel by his word.
Okay.
His commands, what he's building in you and everybody else.
Okay. Now, is it possible?
He's gonna build his kingdom, and there's gonna be,
Is it possible that there's a parallel? There's a spiritual, which we're talking about him
Yeah.
dwelling in us, and there's a natural temple built.
Well, that's when the kingdom comes, but it's not gonna be built by man.
Trump might do it.
Huh?
Trump might do it.
Well, I don't think they'll put Trump's name on it.
No, but listen, we've talked about many times, we've talked about, there's a ton of things that gotta happen before the
Oh,
kingdom
yeah.
gets here, right? But we have got some things that are,
Happening now.
yeah, that have never even been, I mean, how long did I've read that some Bible scholars years and years ago gave up because they didn't think the Jews were ever going back in the land. Well, here they are. Okay? So Mount Sinai will be revealed. It's been bubbling up, and the bubbles are getting more and more increased. And when that happens, that puts legitimacy to the Jews owning Jerusalem. And who knows what could go on. But let's just look at some of these things. Now, I'm not predicting anything, but as a watchman, I'm looking at this and saying, I'm going to pay attention to that. Mount Sinai is going to be revealed. The crossing is going to be revealed. That's going to open up Jerusalem being owned by the Jews. Does anybody remember
If
the
it's
President of the United States
if it's
moving the U.S. Embassy?
to
Yes.
Jerusalem.
Wasn't that Trump?
Yeah, that was Trump, wasn't it?
So,
First president.
well,
What's that?
I'm just saying, nobody owns the land, that's his land. And he's gonna
John, you're
when he
not going
puts
to
his
get an
kingdom
argument
in,
out of me out of
I know.
that.
But I'm just saying, so we keep looking at man doing it, it's not gonna be done by man, it's gonna be done by
John, he's using man in their everyday actions to carry
I'll
out
agree
his
with that.
plan. That's what he's doing. I'm not giving any credit to
Okay.
man. This is all orchestrated by Yah.
That's why I don't look at men to do anything. Man created what we're in today. I'm through the actions of the Lord, letting him do it. Look what man's done. Has they ever settled anything?
He's
Nothing. It's all gonna be done by him through them, I agree. But I don't think we'll be here to see it. There's a lot more to happen.
well, okay. I'm not going to argue with that. We just talked about 23 years, and that was nothing for any of us.
Well, no.
Okay,
But
but
don't think of in his time.
we talked about that too.
Yeah,
He brought
because
them back, and
he's-
they started right at Tabernacles.
Yeah, what did he say in his time to him is, there is none, there is no time.
That's true. But we've got stories of armies being defeated overnight and lepers finding them.
Sure, okay.
John's always.
You can't say he's doing everything and then doubt he can do something.
No, I'm not saying he's not doing it. Everything that's happening, he's behind it. It's doing it because of what he's doing. It's what
Exactly.
he's making happen.
Exactly. So, but there's still a lot of, how do you suppress the opposition that would come from Jerusalem being,
I know.
it's gotta be like a letter from Darius. There's gotta be somebody that has a big enough
I see
stick
your point.
to say,
Mhm.
okay, and you're gonna back off while the construction's going on. But they're only gonna back off till the hooks are in their jaw, so to speak.
Yeah.
Everything done by Yah. Everything done by Yah. And again, I'm not predicting it, I'm just saying, man, there's some stuff lined up that hasn't, we've never been in this situation. Yes, sir.
I could see Trump with the things he's doing now, and the way that the dynamics seem to be shifting. He could be that character with the very big stick.
It's a possibility. I mean, you have to.
Right.
We're not going to have another king of everything until Yeshua gets here.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So you know it can't be a king of everything. But if you look around with your peripheral vision and you're watching everything that's going on, or as much as you possibly can, you can't help but to notice these things are, you know, again, I'm not saying it's falling into place and next week it's all gonna bust loose. But what I am saying is things are lined up like they've never been lined up before. And we thought, you know, there's many things that we thought couldn't happen have already happened. But there's still a lot more that has to happen. And Jerusalem is a big point of contention. Wait, is it called the cup of trembling? Is that what it's called? Yeah, that's what it's called. It's called the cup of
It's
trembling.
shaking over there. I mean, it is the center, it's the focal point of
Right.
everything out there. What is, all the peace that they're trying to do is centered around Jerusalem,
Mhm.
right? They have more power than we do because they're not afraid to use their power.
Mhm.
I mean, if you just want to look at governments.
Right.
And that's, what they do is, some of the stuff they do is absolutely amazing. And it's not because of them.
Well, what's happening is
I
just
understand.
the fact, going back to the U.S. Embassy being moved to Jerusalem, that was a big move.
That was a world shaker.
It raised some dander for a lot of people. All right, listen, I've gone over. Has anybody else got any questions or comments or concerns or?
I just read it.
Okay,
It's time.
then it is time to.
Prepare our hearts to receive the blessing.
Amen.